Hi, this is Donna. Welcome to DD Paper Crafts, and today we're going to be making this bucket beach style gift bag. It's got a handle on one side which then folds through the loop and closes the top of the bag together. And again, this is one of my projects which you can make any size you need to suit your chosen gifts. So let's get started. I'm going to start by making a template for the base of the bag. Once you see what it is that we're trying to achieve, it may be something that you can recreate yourself using partial die cutting, using your circle cutter. You don't necessarily have to make the base template the same way as me, but we won't all use the same method to make a circular shape. So I'm going to show you a method which, as long as you can make a circle, you can make the template for the base. I'm starting with a die which is just under 4 inches, and I've cut this out of scrap cardstock. I'm going to fold this in half, and then I'm going to cut this circle in half. And these semicircles are going to be the curved sides of the bag. I know that I want my bag to be 4 inches wide, or just under 4 inches wide, and I want it to be 8 inches long. So to complete my template, I've cut myself a piece of scrap cardstock which is 5 inches by 4 inches, and I'm going to score at half and 4.5 along the 5-inch side, and I'm just going to adhere the two semicircles onto either end within the 1/2 inch score tabs. Because my circle die was slightly under 4 inches, as you can see, I've got a bit protruding at the top, and what I'm going to do is then trim that off so that the straight edge is in line with the ends of the circles. I'm going to trim off the excess along one side, and then I'm going to run the other side where it doesn't quite meet up and just trim that with my trimmer. And now that's in line, I can just round off the edges of the circle, and that's now the shape for my base. I'm now going to use that to cut around the base piece for my bag. I've had this in my stash for quite some time. It's fabric paper, and this was in a craft finish. This was from Craft Stash, and I actually coloured it with a Distress Oxide, and I think this is Blueprint Sketch. The paper's got a rough side and a smooth side, so I do need to make sure that I'm using the same side facing outwards, and I'm going to have the rougher side facing outwards for my project. I haven't used this before, so I don't know how it's going to glue, how it cuts, how it comes together, so it's a bit of an experiment. I will say that the Distress Oxide did take quite a few days to dry, and then I went over the top with a kitchen towel just to take off the powdery residue that was left behind. So I certainly wouldn't recommend that process of colouring the fabric paper if you want to make a quick project. So I'm just going to cut round the pencil line. I now need to work out how much cardstock I need to go around. So I've cut myself some scrap. I'm going to measure it from one side of the template, of the base template, to another. I'm not going to give you the measurements for this, and you will see why, but along the long side of each piece I'm going to score at 1/2 inch, and on the short side I'm going to score at 1/2 inch. Fold and burnish the score lines, and then you want to remove the bottom corner and take a wedge from the end of the glue tabs, and then cut a series of teeth into the long glue tab. I'm going to use my quick grab glue, although I don't know how this is going to react with the fabric paper, because I'm going to be adding an additional base into the bottom of the bag to cover the serrated teeth, which I'll add with the construction glue. I'm pretty confident that between the two glues this is going to come together. I'm going to work on each piece independently rather than adding the two strips together. I'm going to start with what will be the join on the front or the back of the bag. So the bag will have a centre seam, as it were. and I am going to try and start it centrally. And as I do more of these circular projects, I'm finding the best way for me to adhere the teeth down is to push down from the top onto the base. And then I'm going to use my right hand to make sure and to push the teeth into place along the edge of the base. So I'm pushing down with my fingers from the top, and then I'm going to come in as I curve the piece round, use my hand on the outside to move the side panel into place. I'm always happy to, if necessary, once the piece is dried, cut around any overhang that I might have on the curved edges. So that's that half in, and that's good. I'm happy with that. I've got my second piece. I'm going to fold the teeth in, line the end up with the score line on the piece that's stuck in, and just wrap this around just to check my measurements. And the reason I haven't given you the measurements is because you can see I've cut this far too long. So I'm going to wrap it around, mark the overlap with a pencil. I'll then add 1/2 inch on beyond the pencil line, but I'm not going to add a score line, so if I need to manipulate, I can. So I've cut the second piece down to 10 inches, so I obviously did something wrong with my calculations. I'm going to add glue onto the long centre seam glue strip, add glue onto the teeth, line up the centre panel, and there is an advantage here of having the striped paper because that is helping me to make sure everything's sitting vertically. So once that centre seam's adhered, I'm going to work my way around as I did before, pushing the serrated teeth down from above. I'm going to gently lift up the first tooth on the piece that I'd already stuck down so I can tuck this piece underneath. And then I'm going to add glue in between the seam and sit one panel over the top of another. So I'm just going to check that the shape is as it was, and I'm happy with how that looks. So that's the basis of the bag. I've got two pieces which are 11 1/4 long, and these are 1.5 inches wide, and I'm going to use these to create a band around the base and the top edge of the bag. I want the pieces to join where my centre lines are for my bag. My join on the paper is slightly out because I've cut it wrong, but it's not so evident because of the striped paper. I am going to start adding the band from the centre point. I'm going to use my construction glue. I'm just going to wrap that around, and I can see that's far too long, so I'm just going to peel that back slightly, go in with my scissors and trim that off. Now that's lined up in place, I'm going to just lay the bag down and go in with my burnish tool and burnish down from the inside against my mat so that the band is fully adhered. I'm going to take my second piece and I'm going to cut this before I glue it. So I'm going to butt it up against the glued piece, wrap it around the outside edge, and then just mark with a pencil where it meets the piece that's already adhered. So my two band pieces are actually 10 3/8 of an inch long. I'll add my glue to the second band, make sure I've got my rough side facing outwards, and then add that to the outside of the bag base. I'm happy with that. I'm going to re-burnish. I'm now going to do the same for the top. I'm going to follow the same process. And the bands are adding some rigidity and stability to the DSP. Obviously, you don't need to use fabric paper. You will use whatever cardstock you choose to use. I'm going to try and get my seams lined up, glue that down into place, and then I'm going to add my second band around the top half of the bag, line it up the end of the band, mark it with a pencil, and then cut that. And then I'm going to go in with my score tool and just burnish that top band around the edge. Whilst that's drying, I'm going to use the template to cut myself another piece of DSP, which I'm going to add into the bottom to cover the teeth. I'm now going to create the handle system. I've got two pieces which are A4 in length and they're 3/4 of an inch wide. I'm going to join the two pieces together, and you can obviously make the handles as long or as short as you want, as you can with any of the elements of the bag. This bag is actually an amalgamation of a couple of bags that I saw on Pinterest. So the handle will loop over and then will be adhered onto the front section of the bag like so. I've folded the strip in half and I'm going to glue down the last 5 inches of the handle. I'm going to use construction glue, but hopefully not too much. I don't want to end up with an oozy mess. Loop the handle over and make sure that it sits flush on each other. And I know this is more in centre than the top one, so I'm going to use that as my guide. Add my glue to the last 5 inches and add the strap into place. Once that back strap is applied and glued, I've got another strip which I haven't yet cut to length. This is also 3/4 of an inch wide. I've taken it and looped it to give this look. I'm going to push the bag closed, sit the loop over the top of the handle and work out how long I want this strap to be. So I'm actually going to have my loop, or the ends of my loop, lining up with the bottom edge of the top band. I'm going to mark that with a pencil and then I'm going to trim that to size. I'm just going to double check the placement, wrap it around. The handle will come up like so. So they're going to sit about 1/4 of an inch either side of the centre seam line. So I think it's perhaps one of those things where you could spend so long fiddling around you never get round to gluing. So I'm going to add my glue and get that stuck down into place. And I'm just going to hold that in place for a couple of minutes just so that that glue can start to stick. I'm going to leave that now. I'm going to have my loop as the back and my handle as the front. But you choose which you want as the front or the back. There's no right or the wrong. And finally, for some added embellishment, I'm going to add some brads into the strap. Obviously, I'm trying to get through 3 layers of fabric paper, so this is going to be interesting. I'm not going to measure it, I'm going to eyeball it. And to be honest, that wasn't too difficult. I cut a circle which I'm going to add to the inside of the brad, just to cover up the inside of the brad on the inside. Add a couple more brads and here's the finished bag. The handle slots through the loop and you can just pull that closed. Considering this was a project where I spent the whole day in the craft room where everything went wrong, and I thought I need to create something before I leave the craft room today, I'm quite happy with how this one's come out. And overall, I think it's a lovely looking bag. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel And until next time, thanks for watching.